Everything's to be okay right now. Okay. Welcome in, everyone. Hi, welcome to Witch Chat Atelier. And I myself have a very special guest today in Elle or Elliot Brooks or Full Meta Analysis. And we are here today to talk about Witch Hat Atelier. And it's going to be so phenomenal because we have both just, well, I read the series for the first time. You've just reread the series for the first time. Everything is fresh. Everything is ready to go in our brains and minds. And I'm just so excited to see where this conversation goes, honestly. But yeah, Elle, do you want to introduce yourself and what you like to do, what you like to read, all that good stuff?
So my name is Elle, and I primarily read fantasy books, dip my toes here and there in other genres, but I also have loved stories in all forms since I was a kid, whether it's video games, manga, anime, whatever. It doesn't matter what form it's in. If it's a good story, it's a good story. I just usually have a soft spot for fantasy, so that's what I primarily talk about. Also, I have to ask, we didn't talk about doing puns on the Witch Hat names ahead of time. Did you just come up with that on the spot? Or did we both do it without being aware the other was going to?
As much as I want to pretend that we twinned, I saw you put El Rubio, and then I was like, you know what? This would be the funniest thing ever if I changed my name to Gavri. And we could be Kifri and Arugio.
It's perfect.
It is perfect, but disclaimer, I don't know anyone's character pronunciations or anything like that. So this is going to be fun. This is going to be interesting. Watch the anime come out and we get all the right pronunciations. We'll watch this back and we'll be like, why did we say it like that? We'll probably both say different things as well. We'll both have different pronunciations for everyone, maybe.
We'll have to figure out who the other is talking about because we both say it so differently.
So if I say Rishi, who would you think I was talking about?
Rika is probably how I'd say Riceh.
Oh, yes. Okay, Rika.
With the long hair and the short bangs. Okay, how did you say it again?
I said Rishi.
I'll know who you're talking about.
I'll try and say Ricky. Oh, Ricky. Is that how you pronounce it?
I say Rika, but that's probably wrong.
Rika.
I was trying really hard to commit because I'm pretty bad with names in books anyway. But with this series, I was trying really hard on the reread to commit and actually be like, this person's name is this. This person's name is this. Because I didn't want to, and I'm sure I'm going to forget anyway.
Today, we are going to be talking about the first 13 volumes of Witch Hat Atelier, which constitutes the first 75 chapters. You have them all there and they're beautiful. Those spines, those are some of the most beautiful spines of anything ever, in my personal humble opinion. They are just gorgeous. I had to collect them all as soon as possible. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I started collecting Witch Hat Atelier. I saw those spines in store and I was like, oh, I need to have those. Those are beautiful. I need those on my shelves. Like, stat. Do you have a fun kind of memory of why you started Witch Hat Atelier by any chance?
I don't remember. I think it was just that the art was so beautiful and I decided to give it a try thinking, I don't know what this is, but it looks like it could be really cozy. It does get very dark, I will say, but I just thought we're going up to a cabin, my husband and I was like, this could be a really great manga to bring to this cabin. And then it was funny because at the time my husband was reading Girl from the Other Side, which I also think is great. It's very different. But when we were reading them, we were both kind of companionable silence reading our manga. And in his head, he was thinking, I'm reading the better thing. And then when he picked up Witch Hat, he was like, never mind. It's so good. So I guess that's my only fun start to Witch Hat. But I didn't see anybody really talk about it. I hadn't seen it recommended. I just stumbled across it, which is one of those almost nostalgic feelings from when we're kids of you just see something and think, what's this? And I'm really lucky that happened to be for something I ended up loving.
And I can imagine you probably love, and it has all of the trademarks and hallmarks that you personally love in fantasy stories. There are witches, there's a magic system, really cool, inventive, new kind of magic system. For me personally, when I see anything to do with witches, I want to consume it. I want it and I want to read it all. Well, I did say the spines drew me in first, and that's true. But as soon as I see anything to do with witches, I will get it. So I did actually read the first volume about 2.5 years ago because I wanted to do a manga tournament, a sort of bracket thing. So I read the first volume and I can't remember what it lost against, but it lost. So I didn't end up continuing for like a year and a half. It was a really long time. I know. And I can't remember what it was up against. Oh, actually, I think I do know. I think I remember. And you might be like, oh, well, That makes sense. I wonder if you can guess.
Full Metal.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. It was Full Metal Alchemist. It was the first. I'm pretty sure it was the first volume of Full Metal Alchemist versus the first volume of Witch Hat Atelier, and that's a really hard one though.
Both.
Like you've got to give it.
Wait. Can I say spoilers for their first volumes?
Yes,
Can I
yes.
first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
Go
both
ahead.
of them with moms that are in danger and like a horrible thing goes wrong with magic. There's some pretty obvious parallels between the. Not that they're the same, but that the openings I feel like have some similarities there.
Oh my gosh! I just thought, could you not? This is a great idea for you. Could you not do a comparison video between Witch Hat and Full Metal and combine it? So like Witch Hat Alchemist. Witch Hat Alchemist. Is that not genius?
We're just I think we just love puns. I think puns and combining things. I actually, as much as I think that would be fun, in editing a video at one point, I was trying to get a picture of the Witch Hat anime trailer thumbnail, and I saw somebody has written already about the comparisons between. I haven't read it though. I thought it could be kind of fun to go through and see, because aside from the very obvious things we were just talking about, I'd be curious to see what else they feel like goes together. Maybe there's the fact that it branches out. There's a lot of characters. There's corruption. I don't want to say too much about Full Metal in case people watching this haven't read it, so I don't want to give things away. But I can see some, but I'd be very curious because I think it was framed as it's the next Full Metal. I'm like, that's pretty. I mean, I love both, but that's pretty high praise for somebody to give, because Full Metal is so well loved.
I only read the first volume of Full Metal. I still haven't continued past just yet. I know I have the first 9 volumes. I know, it's insane. I have the first 9 volumes. I'm terrible like this. I read so many volume 1s, and I don't get fit.
So Full Metal beat Witch Hat, but then you didn't
I'm pretty
keep
sure.
going with Full Metal?
Yes, because in the tournament bracket, I'm sure it ended up being, because Berserk was against Spy Family, and Berserk won over Spy Family, and then I think I know. I did like a kind of, what was it again? Like a names in a hat kind of thing, and I kind of did it that way. So it was Berserk versus Spy Family and Full Metal versus Witch Hat. Full Metal and Berserk got to, I'm pretty sure, this semi-final, and then Berserk was my winner, unfortunately. So sorry. Yeah, I love the fact that we could just go on a tangent, but everything's connected. Everything is connected, I promise you.
That's what Full Metal teaches us, just so you know.
Oh, well, that makes me want to read it even more, because one thing I absolutely love is like themes and the kind of things that these mangas and these chapters explore so much and so well, and so many things that I hadn't really seen before myself. But before we dive into like really the beginning of the story, have you ever read anything? And like, same for everyone watching too, I would love to know, have you ever read anything quite like Witch Hat before? Like, people say, oh, it's kind of like Full Metal or whatever, but like, have you ever read or even played? Have you played a game like it? Have you seen a movie like it? Have you read a book like it or anything like that?
Obviously, there's pieces of it that are similar to other things in fantasy, like you were saying, the witch aspect of it and the casting of spells, and they have wands, those sorts of things. But the way that the magic system works, and the way that there is this divide between the brim hats and them, how it plays into morality, it's just so much further reaching than its start would indicate. And of course, other things reach levels that you don't anticipate, but there's just something about the blend of it all in this one that I haven't found too much like it. I mean, I think people compare Freerun to it because they're both just fantasy, but I don't think they're that similar, because one is more of a quest, you're traveling, and then this one's got a home base that we kind of return to frequently. But I would say there's a lot of intrigue in this as well. So I don't think I've found too much. Now, I know that you had a prompt that said if you could turn this into a video game, and I almost feel like we need to save that for later, because I know that I could naturally get into that now, but I would talk about way too much, because once I saw that prompt, I was like, I need this to be a video game now, and I started immediately constructing in my head how it worked. But there are some games that I could see kind of having parallels. But to answer your question, no, I haven't really found anything too much like it.
And you're more well-read than I am, especially in the fantasy genre. Like, so it just shows like it's a testament to how unique Witch Hat is. And I will say there is a game that I've played that I would consider quite similar to Witch Hat. I don't know if you've played it, but it's Ni no Kuni.
Yes, I have, but
Yeah.
there are more. There's more than one, right?
Yeah, there's Wrath of the White Witch and Revenant Kingdom. So I would compare it more to Wrath of, Wrath, Wrath of the White Witch. So I got like this really cool deluxe collector's edition of it, and it has this spell book inside that's like a replica from the one that's inside. And it has all of the sigils and symbols and things to cast spells and stuff. Because there are so many things to do with symbols and drawing in Witch Hat Atelier, it kind of reminded me of that, as well as having a protagonist who wants to go on this quest to save his mother in Ni no Kuni. And then in Witch Hat, we have Coco, who desperately wants to save her mother. I feel like that's probably a similar-ish parallel in the whole kind of portal fantasy aspect of it. I mean, obviously, like witches and magic in Witch Hat is all in the one world, but Coco herself is transported from the regular world where she can't be a witch to a world where she can be a witch, essentially. I kind of thought it was a little bit similar to that in a way. And I love Ni no Kuni. I thought it's such a good game. Well, I guess that is a good way of going into the beginnings of this story, because we're talking about Coco and how she discovers the world and what her kind of personal quest is. But what do you think, El, is the main draw of the story to begin with? Like, what drew you in with like the very first few chapters? Like, did you think it brought like enough to the story and the world to be like, okay, I kind of want to continue after this? Like, this was a really good introduction, or vice versa? Did you think it wasn't the best way of pulling you in? Did it take you time to get into the story?
I think right away there was a sharp contrast between starting out with this little girl who's just so filled with wonder and awe at magic. And so it kind of pulls you in with this sense of this is going to be so sweet and it's going to be lovely. But it almost seemed like it was going to be slice of life. And then all of a sudden, things go terribly wrong immediately. And that sort of disrupts everything. And it also disrupts the feeling that you have initially that this is going to be low stakes. So when you see how quickly things can go wrong, it kind of lets you in on just how extreme the consequences can be of magic. And then you're curious, or at least I was, as to who is this Kifri character? That's how I say his name. Who is Kifri? And he seems not just wanting to protect her, but also in a sense almost like using her because he feels like she's a clue. So he seems nice, but anytime there's a character where I'm like, can I trust this person? I do find myself pulled in, because then you want to know more about, well, what are they after? So I do think it builds the intrigue, and it gives you a good indication of the kinds of feelings that this elicits. Like I said, it's the mix of cozy slice of life with some pretty hard-hitting things. But for me, I would say just how much those come to the forefront don't really present themselves till about volume 7. So even though I was already invested, plus the art is so pretty, you know, you could just pick it up for the art. Even though I cared about the story, it did feel a little introductory, but once all of that groundwork has been placed and everything starts to happen in volume 7, where you start to really see, oh wow, this can become devastating. And now I'm starting to kind of understand why the antagonists have the views that they have. And anytime you can give me these moral conundrums where you're like, okay, I like these characters, I want to believe they're the good guys, but maybe they're not exactly, or maybe they're just products of a society that's flawed, which kind of inherently makes them flawed if they're upholding it. But what's the alternative? The alternative seems almost too dark, but whatever you got to do to disrupt the system, you know, you've got all these questions that arise. And then from there, it just keeps going with all that, which I love, and which I am so curious to see how it's going to move forward, because we've already done some pretty heavy lifting.
It's funny you say about like intrigue and things, because just to make more people intrigued about this chat, I have like a really bonkers theory about Kifri, which is different to your thing. I watched your video today. I need you to explain it better later on, but just to like keep people hooked, I have a different theory that I think is so batshit crazy. I don't think it's actually. Oh, but you know, I do think there is like, there are clues to it, there are little things and evidence towards it, but at the same time, I'm like, it will probably be a little bit.
Okay, can we just talk about that? I want to know. You can't tempt me, and then.
I know. Oh, maybe we can. Okay, maybe we can. Okay, so we might as well just grasp on what you said about, you know, being so intrigued with him to begin with, because he seems so strange to begin with. And I say from my very first ever Witch Hat video, when you see Kifri's like face half in darkness and he's talking to somebody and he's like, okay, I've got the girl kind of thing. Like, it feels like, who is he talking to? Like, I immediately had this sense of, okay, is he kind of bad? Like, is he kind of evil? Oh God, how do I
Formulate.
yeah, with Kiefer, I have a feeling he might be two people. I feel like he might be, this is so crazy. I
It's
feel
not
like he might be,
you can't get weirder
no,
than the he's a
I
tree theory, so
I know, which you have to say, no, I can't get with it. I think he might be Igwin.
okay,
I think he might
yes.
be Coco's father.
Okay, so it's like a mix of some of what I've thought and
Hmm.
some of what other
Hmm.
people think. Okay,
Hmm.
I am curious. I've seen people think, which I don't think this series is going to get into time travel, but I also feel like
Hmm.
they've been hitting
Hmm.
the reversing of time to a certain point
Hmm.
kind of spell. So
Hmm.
then there are some thoughts that the future him that covers with the if that's Egwene, right? If Egwene is
Hmm.
him, is that him in
Hmm.
the future who then somehow manages to like replicate himself, go back in time, and then have this other Kifri be like the mentor, but then are there memories that are still there or this? So I don't think that's the craziest theory.
Well, first, I haven't checked anyone else's theory, so I don't know like all that. I only know yours from the video.
Okay.
Mainly, one of the reasons why I thought it as well is because there was one panel, Kiefer, and Igwin is like behind him in a way, like, but it's like more of a self-reflection kind of moment. And then we also have like pretty much at the end of volume 13, Kiefer has like kind of like lost control of his body a little bit. He's like trying to wake up. He's like, oh, my body's kind of like acting all
Yeah.
strange. Like I can't really move it. So I feel like there's something weird there. But also the fact that Egwene is called the Eye of the World, or like the lidless one. And Kifri's eye, where is that? You know, like what? You know what I mean? It's
What
like
happened
I'm
to
trying.
it?
Yeah, what happened to it? Like, is the lidless one is the Eye of the World? Is Kifri's eye the Eye of the World? Like, you know what I mean? It's like I'm trying to connect the dots because I find the breadcrumbs of all these different things that could potentially happen so utterly fascinating. But I feel like maybe it does connect to him being Coco's father because like it's kind of divided a little bit. Like when we had that moment, I think around about volume 7, when he was like, oh, is Coco just a means to an end, or do I actually care for her? I think he's like very divided, very pulled as well. And we have so much inverting of Coco. So there was a panel of Coco, she's, you know, I feel like she's kind of hit rock bottom a little bit. And we have this panel, there's darkness encroaching on her and there's like light inside. And then or the other way around. And then a few chapters before, we have the exact same Kifri panel, but it's inverted. So it's either the darkness inside and the light on the outside. And I just find that so fascinating. Why are there so many parallels? And I don't think Coco got that spell book and anything by accident. And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
why would she get it? Maybe it's her father. Maybe because Coco might have some dark roots. Like maybe because there's a question like, will Coco go evil? Will she use forbidden magic? And her fit. Her fit, there's that moment where it's like, oh, potentially like she's evil, and she has that hat on and she's got that dark
Yeah,
clothing
yeah.
on. Oh my god, she looked amazing. So I kind of hope she does. I really hope
The
she does.
style points of the villains is
Oh my god,
higher.
1000%. I always think the villains are dressed the best, you know, like always. And they're always more interesting too. But Coco, I feel like, why is that kind of something that might be inherent to her? Is it because her father could potentially be the evil one, the dark one of the brimmed caps or whatever? So I don't know. I just feel like there must be, and I feel like the author, Kamome Shirahama, I feel like she has kind of planned everything out. I feel like she knows what she's doing. And I just feel like
You
it's
know what
not going to be open out.
probably is nothing, but very
Mm.
early on, I found I don't remember the exact wording, but Coco in volume 1 said something like, "The world is brimming with magic." And I'm like, I
Mm.
feel like that was on purpose to have
Yeah.
that word there, but I don't know that I want to clarify on some of the theory stuff we just talked about. I don't
Mm.
know that this is going to introduce time travel. I don't know if Egwene and Kifri are the same in some fashion. I certainly think that there's validity in wondering about those sorts of things. I just don't know if I'm totally bought into those theories, but I think there's something
Mm.
there. And I think
Mm.
I lean more toward if one of them is Kogo's father, I feel like it's more likely Egwene than it is because
Mm.
I feel like we see the faces of the other ones, or at least some of them. We don't see his face ever, this particular
Mm.
individual, which I would think there's intentionality with that as well. Obviously, I don't know. I just think there's something there. But your eye thing when you're talking about there's so much with the eyes, but there's a panel where there's an
Mm.
eye within the roots that are around the panel. and then Kifri's in the middle. And the fact that they have the eye in the middle of the roots, that's, I think, another part of the whole Kifri's a tree theory.
You didn't need to explain that. Yeah.
So for anybody that ends up, watching this, I want to be very clear. This isn't my theory, but it's the most fun theory I've come across. But there's this idea that the trees that they use to make their wands, that forest that Kifri was found in as a child, that there was some kind of experiment where they were almost trying to, in the same way that you see accidents happen where one of the brim hats combines with his cat. It's almost like a form of human transformation, except for in reverse, where it's like these trees are somehow now taking form. And he was the first example, a first test subject for this.
Sasaran is the brim cap. Yep.
So there's something perhaps with like the eye still needs to be a piece that connects him somehow to the forest. And I think the theory goes on to say they think that some of the brim caps from before the pact are those trees in that forest where things went wrong. And so they think that Kifri somehow and him exist. I don't remember all of it. It's not my theory, but something about how him taking human form, that somehow he's key into them gaining life again in some fashion, those trees, like being able, and then they can bestow all the knowledge that was lost, which would be serious trouble for the rest of them. The fact that there's a lot of fun parallels, the fact that they talk about how the trees like to basically take root in certain places because they have a level of sentience, and that Kifri always seems to want to be out in nature away from the Great Hall. And everybody points out, like, why though? This is so much more convenient. And he's like, no, I like it there. And he even has, after he's injured and he's in the Great Hall, he's like, I just want to go home. And around that same time is where okay, another character whose name, who knows how you say it, but Belderuit, where he talks about how that's when you really hear like the trees will go wherever they want to go. And then right around that same time, Kifri's like, I want to go home. I want to go out to my atelier. The color use for his character is the same as the colors of those trees because they're a lighter color. Additional detail I maybe inserted. This isn't something that the person who came up with this theory said, but the fact that the trees darken, and that's when you know to take off a piece. And in volume 13, so this is brand new, you see at the end what you were talking about before, where he's like, what's going on? Why do I feel the way I feel? And he notices the other character's eyes are lightening. So then I'm wondering if the reverse happens when you're a human, because I don't know how to say his name either, but Kustas, or however you want to say it, his contraption for his feet is also made of that same wood. So it seems like it has an effect on the body when it's combined in some fashion, and maybe it's draining him. And certainly there's an element of blood as well, because the tree sap is, I think they even call it like the blood of the tree or something like that. So there seems to be some level of blood magic, which would maybe have some parallels with the eye. Like I said, not my theory, so I'm sorry if I explained it poorly, but when it's all laid out, it's so much fun.
Well, do you think it has anything to do with the fact that he was found in a casket under the earth as well? Like,
Yes,
do you think it has anything to do
in
with
that
that?
forest.
So that's surely that must be another kind of nail in the coffin, so to say. That might be Kifri. Kifri might be a tree.
I would want to know too. And the theory is called the tree-free theory, which I think is super fun. I would want to go back and check, because I saw this theory after I reread the series, because I wanted to reread it and have my thoughts and then see what other people think. And this is when I stumbled across that. But I do recall that they, I think, used one of those orbs, like a tracking orb. And I could have sworn they had his blood and that's how they found him. But I'm like, how would they have had that? But maybe I'm mistaken. But I don't recall how they would have found him otherwise. And I also question if he doesn't actually completely have his memories lost from that moment. Because there's a part with Elrugia where he says something like, well, because you don't remember anything from then. And there's like this panel of Kifri kind of looking like, and you're like, do you remember? Or do you have no memories because you didn't exist before that moment? You know what I mean?
Gosh. Yeah.
It's such a fun theory.
It is. Like, now when I reread Witch Hat, I'm going to end up trying to spot things that help kind of solidify that theory. And I think it's so interesting that you mention about Ollie as well in memories, because Kifri seems to love taking memories from other people as well. Maybe that has something to do with his own personal connection to memories. Like, does he say it as something that's so fleeting, like, it's okay, I could just like erase his memory kind of thing? Kind of like taking memories for granted a little bit.
I actually tabbed almost the reverse early on before he wipes Nolnoa, the old man who's so cute,
Mhm.
before he wipes
Mhm.
his memories, he's talking to his apprentices and he says like, I never want to have to take memories if we can avoid it. And then shortly
Mhm.
after he takes
Yeah, it just takes it.
Nolnoa's. So you're like, do you not want to? Or
Considering Tata as well, when he saw that, he's kind of wary about Kifri himself. There's
yeah.
definitely a huge thing that he's hiding, and I think the series has done so well is demonstrating like the child characters as being just as smart and just as capable as the adult characters. So I feel like I do trust Tata's judge of character. If a child protagonist says they're a little bit odd, I'm gonna kind of believe them.
When he seems to right away recognize, did he just wipe my
Mm.
grandfather's memories? I thought it was kind of cute when Coco, but also sad when Coco's like, you should have him be your
Mm.
mentor, and he's just kind of like, I don't know if we're the best fit, you know, like I like her, but I don't want to diss her teacher. And what's funny is like at first it just feels like lore. You know what I mean? At
Mm.
first you're like lore about the trees, okay, and then you move on, but you're like, there's something. If fantasy
Mhm.
books have taught me anything, they sneak in the stuff at the part that doesn't feel pertinent to the present.
Yeah, they love to foreshadow things, don't they? They love to sprinkle in a little bit of this, a little bit of that, especially to kind of change your minds about characters or anything like that. Because I feel like having a set idea of what Witch Hat is at the beginning, as we said, starts off very cozy. It definitely changes gears, and with you mentioning blood magic and things like that as well, it definitely some of the things that happen in volume 12, like with the leech thing, and the way that the leech thing out of the pervert guy, and it just, oh my god, that was body horror. That was actual body. I was not expecting it in this. So I do feel like being able to turn things on its head is going to be a huge thing, especially since this entire society, the entire witches, it could end up turning on its head at any given moment because there's this huge secret involved with which that was what we were introduced to at the very beginning, is that witches are witches, they're born witches, you can't be a witch. And then Coco, in the very start, she witnesses how magic is performed. Do you find it interesting that this series kind of allows anyone to be a witch? It allows anyone to achieve it. It's a kind of like, if you put your mind to it, because I wanted to talk about Coco and like what you think about Coco and if you have any attachment to her. Do you think because she's demonstrating this is a world where you can pretty much be what you want to be and you can change the world as well? There was a quote actually from, oh, I didn't mean to do the thumbs up, but I'll take it. It's what Lagra says in the very recent volume. We want to help others with our spells. We want to make ourselves useful, not simply because we are witches and that is what witches do, but because we are people with concern and compassion. So I feel like a huge thing is that it's not even just the fact that you have witches is a different thing and nobody else can be them. And it's a very like kind of segmented thing. Obviously it is to the people in this world for now, but to actually have a character who comes into it and she shakes that up and she has always dreamt of being a witch and she wants to be a witch so bad. And in the very first chapter, she is told by Kifri, you are going to be a witch. And you can be a witch. You don't have to be born that way to be a witch. So do you find it fascinating that that's the kind of angle of like the witchcraft and witches and Coco has kind of gone down?
I definitely think so. I think to your point about it establishes from the beginning that a theme is to have your worldview transformed. So you have that within the first volume through Coco. And then kind of continuously, her worldview keeps shifting because once she's introduced to what witches are and what they can be and what they can do, she has this love of it until she realizes I can't do truly anything I want. There are restrictions. And then when
Mm,
she starts to see how those restrictions affect other people, then there's this question of, do I love magic anymore? Because
mm,
she has that conversation with Tarta. He's noting that she seems very down and that she doesn't seem like she's got that wonder like she had initially. And I do think that kind of this continued theme is really well done by having the protagonist be a child because
mm,
it is so naturally part of growing up is you have no idea what's going on and you
mm,
are kind of filled with awe and wonder and a lot of emotions and then you start to think you have a grasp on things and then something happens that disrupts your view and it kind of just keeps happening until at some point you become cynical and then you know
mm.
everything
Yeah.
we haven't gotten
You
there
grow up.
with Coco quite yet, yeah, but I think what's also beautiful though is that Coco has such a pure heart in a sense, and that I don't
Mm,
think is just because she's a cute little child, but because she genuinely wants to do good, and it's through that that I think she could be a vehicle for change, which would
mm,
be a nice way to tie the themes together of like the worldviews are constantly shifting through her eyes, but it is as a
mm,
result of that that she can then change the world and then
mm,
change other people's views. I think that could be a really good arc for her. I like her a lot.
mm.
Kifri is my favorite though, just because he is so fascinating and interesting, and not just because of the tree theories and other theories with him, just because it's Kifri, you know.
Yeah. Do you think I want to ask this question like so badly, and I kind of want you to just say yes. And I feel like you kind of know what question I'm going to
Orugio,
ask about it. Do you
are they in
think
love?
are they in love? Are they husbands? Are they secret husbands? Did they have a secret
Okay, I
marriage?
haven't
Like,
read I haven't read Witch Hat Kitchen. Have
oh,
you?
me neither. No,
Okay,
not
my
yet.
friend picked up one of the volumes and she said it's just the two of them. Like Kifri, I think Kifri wakes up early and then makes some kind of yummy dish for Orugio, and it's just like the most wholesome gay vibes. It's like everybody what they're so cute, except for the
Yeah.
memory wiping thing, you know. Aside
Mm,
from that, they're so I mean,
shocking.
they're just so cute. At the very least, they feel, even if they're not in love in
Mm,
that way, they're
mm,
still two men raising a bunch of little girls. You know, like it's
yeah.
still the most wholesome, adorable thing. And I feel like there is a love there. Maybe it's not one that we can even define. And maybe they're just
Maybe.
friends. I don't know. I don't know that I
His
would.
roommates.
Yeah, exactly. They're just roommates who have lived together and support each other since they were little. And then now that they're adults, they are like adopting a bunch of kids in this cute shack in the middle of the woods. Yeah, that's nothing going on there.
Nope.
Um,
Nope. Nothing.
well, Orugio, it's funny because he almost has this like he's kind of secretly charming, where he seems a little
Mm,
grumpy, but also he seems like
mm,
charming. And
mhm,
Kifri almost seems just like I mean, that almost contributes to the like, is he a person? Because he has this feeling of like he always has something between him and the people around him. Does
mm,
that make like a wall that
yeah.
doesn't allow him to fully have relationships in this is a bad way to put it, but like their final forms. Like there's always something
Mm.
keeping him. And when Olrugio is like, I'll be there for you, I'll help you, and then he wipes his memory, I'm like, Kifri, why did you have to do that though? I need answers.
Well, I can probably explain that myself because in my life, so I've never been in a relationship. I always push away because as soon as I start to see it getting scarily real, as soon as I start to think, oh, we're getting a bit too close now. That's exactly what Kiefer did. He was like, no, this is getting too much. Like, we're getting too close now. And I need to like put that distance. There is definitely a lot of trauma with Kiefer in his past. And it's definitely, I feel like it's a defense mechanism more than anything. But yeah, there's just so many things about their dynamic in Alrugio when he had to go to, I think, the Great Hall when he had to do the colorful steps thing, and he's like, oh, but what about Kiefer and the kids? You know, the way that he talks about it, it is actually like he is like co-parenting
Yeah.
with him. And there was that other moment as well when Tata and Coco have the bands on that
Yes.
Eninia, I think,
Yes.
put on, and Ollie is like, oh, it's like a love thing, it's like so sweet and romantic. And then they're talking about what they did, like him and Kiefer back in the past, like, oh, we did worse things, you know, things like that. And it was just like the flow of that conversation was like, it started about like this potentially romantic thing between Coco and Tata, and then it goes into like conversations about them. And I don't know, I say it everywhere. What can I say? That's my gay agenda. It's like making everything gay. So
But it's a pretty strong case. You know, I feel like the Knights Morales character.
mm,
Oh my gosh, was that so sad when they're like, we're just gonna send him
yeah,
away, and you're like,
yeah.
no.
Yeah, Gallagher and Atwood. And that was like, well, one of the few, because when I've read a manga series like this, kind of, would you say it's like mainstream? Would you say like Witch Hat is like a mainstream?
I don't think it's there yet.
Because I was going to say, when I've read like the bigger things, I don't think they've ever really went all the way with like a same-sex couple. And it's like not really been something that's been, but I feel like I've read a lot of shonen stuff, a lot
Yeah.
of shonen jump stuff. So I feel like none of that is really ever done. But I think this was the very first time, other than the like gay stuff I've read, like Dick Fight Island and Cherry Magic and things like that. Other than that, you know, like I haven't really seen this kind of representation. Oh my gosh. And I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but the representation for like disabilities, and like
Yeah.
when you were talking before about how we're kind of advocating for change in this world, and with the fact that we have Tata have, what was it, like Silverwash, I think it was his kind of disability. And then we have Custis. We have this moment where it said something like, this world isn't made for everyone, or like it's not as accessible
Yes,
for
I have
everyone.
it tabbed. I was trying to see if I could find it really
Yay.
fast.
Yay. Honestly, I have nothing to, I have so many photos on my phone, but I have like nothing to, I just came into this just all vibes. We have Coco, who again, like she's coming from like the outside world almost, and every single arc that we have that gets passed, we see Coco bring so many of the things that she's learned from her mother, from her normal life, and she's incorporated into witch life, and she's kind of bridging the two together. And because witches, they don't really have a need for a lot of things that humans really desperately need. There was another time when it was like, oh, the power is given to the people who don't need it, whereas the people who need the power don't have it.
Yep,
Kind of
I
thing as
have
well.
that tab too.
Oh, so we're just one mind. Are we Kefri and Igwin? Are we actually the same person? Never seen us in the same room before, have we? But yeah, I just feel like Coco being such an advocate for change and having all of those things be very prominent is another thing I don't often see, is that we have the disability representation and people like actually wanting to change the world so that everyone can have an accessible world. You
And I
know?
really like how Tarta reacts to these sorts of things. He almost like when he's basically studying medicine and he knows he's not supposed to, but he's like, it helps though. And I like that he's a little bit of a rebel. But when they're confronted by again, I don't know how you say it, Custis, after he's been affected by Aninia, and he comes back and he's very angry with them, and that showdown, if you want to call it that, is heartbreaking. And he is saying, was it fun to be able to look, at me and see that I needed help and keep the help from me, and all these things. And when he leaves and he puts the bands on them, and Tarta doesn't have this defensive reaction of, he just doesn't understand that we were, he's like, I would also, I mean, he has what you were talking about, where like the people that need the help the most aren't the ones that have it. But he immediately is like, I understand where he's coming from. And I think that so often when people are angry at their circumstances that have been placed on them because of failed, institutions, things being lost in the cracks and poverty, because he experienced that too. He's just like, the world's against me. When that anger finally comes out, so many people then in real society condemn somebody for ever getting angry in the first place, when it's like, well, have you seen what they've been through? And for Tarta to have that reaction of understanding and compassion. I love all these characters are great, but I love him so much. And I think him being outside of an atelier of any kind allows him to sort of have a bridge with the rest of the world and the witches in a way that's different. So it makes sense to me that he would be that character that would have these thoughts. But man, I know it's in volume 8 with his sweet little self on the front, where he's talking about exactly what you were saying, where we never really thought about how difficult, because they have their shoes where they can fly. So we never really think about the challenges other people face. I know it's somewhere. It hits so hard that she didn't just have this accident happen to Custis and then now he has trials. It's like that feeling of everything's against me, and it builds and it builds and builds, where even when he's in the hospital, and the fact that his parental figure, who I love him so much, and he loves the boy so much, and it breaks my heart. Dagda, I think is his name.
Yes,
but
yes.
The fact that because it's hard for them to afford their basically medical bills, he's having to resort to less than sophisticated means of earning money, and then that's putting him in danger himself. And it's just this vicious cycle where it feels like it's impossible to get out of it. In a way, I feel like the spells are sort of like a stand-in for money. Like, if only people would give more and would care more about those in need and pay attention to their struggles, instead of feeling like we keep this to ourselves, which is why the Brim Hats are such great antagonists, even though the face of them, or lack of, is it seems so sinister. but their
Mhm.
principles make
Mhm.
so much sense. And man, it's just fantastic. Sorry, I'm just gushing now.
No, honestly, no, there's so much to unpack with that. And I love the fact that you even said principles, because I feel like we are having a breakdown in this part of the story of I guess the three main things, the three whys. So like Belderut, Vinana, and Lagre. We have the whys and teachings, whys and principles, and the whys and friendship. And I feel like we have all of them breaking apart and like breaking down right now. The principles are the fact that is it fully right to kind of gatekeep what could potentially help people? There was a quote from a nurse saying, any soul out there who tries to restrict the things you learn is only doing it to keep you square under their thumb, which also brings out a breakdown of whys and teachings. Like, so the teachings that they're giving, if they're gatekeeping so much of it from so many people, is that actually like a good thing? And we do say the good and bad of, seeing other people perform magic. Like anyone could do anything, and it isn't going to be all sunshines and daisies. It's going to be a total world change. And then friendship too. Friendship, Custis, Tata, Coco, the kind of shaking up of them. I've got my cats literally fighting each other right now. They're running around. So I do apologize. They're very distracting.
They represent Coco and Tarta and then Custis,
They do. They actually do. So, like, just if you want an actual physical representation of them, my cats do it perfectly. I love what you were talking about with, like, Todd is kind of acceptance because, he understands. And I feel like what makes a great villain, what makes a great antagonist, because, like, would I really call Custis an antagonist or a villain or anything? He does oppose our main character. So, I guess in a way, he is an antagonist. But, like, I understand him too. I understand him. I understand a lot of the things that a lot of the more morally grey, I guess, characters are doing. And you even say that from Tatia. Tatia.
I say Tetia.
Tetia. I like that, Tetia. So
Okay.
with Tetia, she's even like, when they're giving the water and they're like, oh, should we teach them how to purify water? Should we show them that? And Agot is like, we absolutely cannot. That's going against our principles. So I feel like every single thing that the three Ys represent and stand for are definitely breaking down, because we have so many people questioning what it is they're doing in power. Like, why are they gatekeeping all of this stuff? If it actually is going to help people, why would they keep it from people? So I feel like this is the direction we're going in with the story, which I love, but it's so different to what I expected when we first went into the story. I was genuinely expecting cozy Atelier vibes and just doing like little bits of magic, passing exams and becoming a full-fledged witch.
Right.
No. This is literally breakdown of society. As you say, magic spells could represent like money and wealth in this world. I 1000% agree. So many of the societal things that we've been exploring too, the Knights Morales themselves and like those people in power can represent our government and the people who stand in for the people in our government. And like, you can get good people, you can get bad people. There's kind of a mixture there. And I think one of the most brilliant things that this author has done, and it's a chapter that does have a trigger warning, but it does say, oh, it doesn't really affect the plot if you do skip it just in case you want to. But to me, it just showed us like how much more rooted in society Witch Hat Atelier is, and how much that this author is trying to represent change and how much she wants change as well. Because the fact that a victim of, sexual assault is believed straight away, and they're even like, I mean, the abuser's face is scratched out. Amazing. Like, you never ever get to see his face. And then you have being in front of the Knights Morales, and it's Lelucci. She is the one who is vocalizing what's happened to her and her friend, and the master person is like, oh, she's making it up, or she's like taking it out of context, blah blah blah. But the Knights Morales are like, no, you're the one who's in the wrong here. You should not be penalizing her. She shouldn't apologize. You know what I mean? So I feel like this series does represent our society in a very fantastical way, and the things that I think Kamome Shirahama wants to change about it as well. You know what I mean? Maybe?
Yeah, so that part is brilliant. And even before that, where you see it's not it would seem from what we got in volume 13, we finally got this kind of discussed a little further. But what happened to Rika and her brother, there's a panel where you see Kifri and Olrugio, and I think Kifri even has his hand extended, and he's like, you can tell us, we will believe you. And just to have these two adult figures, and same thing with the Knights Morales, say like, we believe you, is so impactful. And I think it also shows the Knights Morales, because in a lot of ways they represent an enforcer of some kind, and they do have, it's not like you were saying they can be good and bad, but like the actions they take themselves, that moment you're like, oh, okay, so they're not just the worst, you know, because you see them through Kifri's perspective where he's like, stop trying to wipe my students' memories. And Kifri seems every time they show up, he's like, when they show up into his tent and he's just like, oh, hello, what a pleasant surprise. Like, he's very snarky about it. So you have this gut reaction, especially because they're basically shoot first, ask second, you know, sort of way of being. You feel like they're villainous. And then you see that moment where they're standing up for people that are victims, and you're like, okay, so there's nuance with them too. She always has nuance in every scenario, essentially, and it's done great. And I was going to add to going back to Kustis and him getting help. So I talked about there being like this, oh, the medical bills are expensive. But it's not just that, it's even like his chair. They talk about how we have to keep very good track of the chair because it's worth a lot. And you even see when Tarta first meets him, it's because he's helping him fight off people that were going to beat him up and take his chair to sell to make money. The fact that even the equipment and the contraptions that they make to help people, like those still cost money. So there's still a level of like having to profit off of these creations that make people's lives better. In the context of the medical field, it's kind of like when people need medicine and it costs so much to get. But even outside of that, just the fact that they make money off of these contraptions where it's like, what I think is interesting is, while yes, I understand restrictions on magic, I do think it'd be interesting, you've been talking about like the gatekeeping of it. If they didn't gatekeep and everyone was allowed to, under a certain set of principles, practice magic, then people could just like create spells themselves, and then there'd be more innovation and potentially more progress.
That's why they're like the devil's advocate, aren't they? They're kind of like, they are the enforcers, and they are doing what they think is right. Whenever they're doing something, they are the heroes of their own stories. They're being told what to do. They believe in what they're fighting for. And it's the same with Kustis when he's going against our main characters. It's the same with Kifri and whatever thing he's got going on, because we still don't know everything. Got it with Coco, we got it with the different. So there's just so many people who, okay, if I put myself in their shoes, I can totally see why. Because we've seen the downside of people being ignored. Again, like the breaking down of Tatia saying, oh, should we just teach them how to purify magic? It's just like, there's just so much nuance to it. There's just a huge like wealth of things about this world that I think would take such a long time to like really dissect all of it.
Also, I just want to say the whole thing that you've been talking about with the purifying of the water, when they present it initially and people are like, wait a sec, so I got to do this other thing too. That's like, and you're like, okay, it's such a real world reaction. It's like, we make recycling as easy as possible, and people are like, I don't want to have to separate my trash. And you're like, it's so easy, and you still won't do it. And like that, the way they come together, like, what if we made it more fun though? And then people get on board, and you're like, I hate that that's what society is like, but it is. I wanted to add, because I mentioned, it was a little random, but I mentioned Kifri being kind of snarky to the Knights Morales. One of my favorite Kifri moments, as far as snark goes, because he's not snarky very often, but when that horrible teacher of the boy Iuni is how I say it.
His master was called Kukro.
Yes.
Kukro.
They all hate him, which I like. When Kifri's like standing there looking out at like the ocean or something, and the guy comes up to him and he's like, oh, because right before that, Rika was like, I don't want to take tests. I hate tests. And he's like, I really think this is good. And he's like patient with her, and she's like, well, fine, but she's being a little in her feelings. But once you see backstory, and you can kind of tell there's something there anyway, and Kifri is very understanding and patient. But when the guy comes over and just starts complaining, thinking they're the same, like, oh, those ones are never going to go anywhere, they're always going to be troublesome kids, and he's just going off, and then Kifri's like, oh, I didn't see you there. Were you talking? Like, I love that moment so much, because and then the guy's like, oh, yeah, sorry. And then he's like, best we be going. And I love it. I love that he was so petty and just straight up ignored the guy. I love anytime Kifri gets protective too.
Just to build on the sassiness, I'm telling you, a heterosexual man would not have been as sassy as he was. I'm just saying. Again, more evidence. More evidence is stacking up. Sure. We've talked like so much about like these great things about like with characters and stuff. And I'm so glad you mentioned Uini, because he is now under the care of Alara.
Alara.
And my question was going to be, is there a character who you wish to see more of? Or somebody who you think might not be as developed as you would love and you would just genuinely love to see them be incorporated in the story a bit more? And my answer to that would be Alara, because, you know, like she does have this like side thing now with Yuini, and it's amazing. Like I love the fact that she has taken him under her wing now, and that's just like so admirable. I just love the connection she has with Kifri as well. I feel like she is also somebody who could be like a key to uncovering Kifri's past too. So she's the kind of person who I would genuinely love to see incorporate more in the story. I think there was a bonus chapter at the end of one of the volumes that had Alara and Yuini kind of together a little bit. It was more like a little bonus. Oh, here's what they're getting up to kind of thing. But I would love to see her a lot more.
I would love to see her too. I think that she's interestingly the person that maybe knows the most about Kifri in a way. Because when, and I could be wrong, but at the beginning when he's telling somebody like, oh, I have her, basically like, can you make sure the paperwork goes through? I thought that's who he was talking to, was to her. And so I'd be curious if because she seems pretty on board with lying to the Knights Morales and like twisting things.
Yeah.
So it seems like there's already this established, we're in this together, and I don't know why she seems to have more skin in the game, but you would think it would be Olrugio, who I also want to know more about, because I like Olrugio a lot, but in general, I'm wondering what else there is. And it's almost like what you were talking about before. I almost feel like Kifri's reaction to Olrugio wanting to help, it's almost like he cares too much about him to let him get swept in it. But like, if Alara is potentially also somewhat helping him, it's like, well, we're friends, but we're not that close of friends. Like, I can work together with you, like soldier and soldier, but like, this is my love. I can't let anything happen to him.
You mentioned something really cool about Olrugio in your video today, actually, that I kind of didn't really think of while I was reading, but it is a good question. And that's kind of like, why does he not want to take an apprentice? Because one of the main things about this world is that witches kind of pass on their knowledge to, so that's kind of just like what they do. So like, as you say, like, yeah, it would be amazing to find out more about him, because I kind of want to know his story about that too. Is there something like really off-putting? Like, has he had a bad experience in the past or something? So you mentioned that today, and that was just really interesting to me, because I didn't pick up on that.
What made him want to be one of the, I think they're called watchful eyes, which is I feel like there's some symbolism with calling him that also with the whole eye stuff. But the fact that he pursued this path of being a watchful eye and he does seem, Kifri does too, but Olrugio seems especially attentive to when kids, he's noticing. He even says I want to say he says it to Coco. He I think says it to her, like, you can choose any person you want to be your mentor. It doesn't have to be Kifri. And the fact that he would do that, and he does it to multiple children as well, or at least he seems like, because you see with Rika that him and Kifri are like, we'll believe you. I wonder if he experienced something where there was almost like negligence, or there was nobody around. I know he lived in a different area because him and a Knights Morales character talk about it, but he obviously was very gifted at what he did. But I do wonder if he has something where nobody really knew and nobody could help because there was just nobody around. And so he wants to prevent anything from happening like what happened to him.
And I feel like you're onto something there, because, yeah, I feel like Olrugio was the first person to ask Kifri, is Coco a means to an end? He doesn't even know Coco compared to Kifri. And like, yet he's doubting Kifri and his intentions because he feels so protective of this child he's kind of just met, in a way, you know? So I definitely feel like maybe something neglectful, some kind of mistreatment of a child or something like that, that's kind of eaten away at him, and there's something there. But it's definitely to like agree with what you're saying about him there, which again, like, such richness to these characters and their backstories. How are we ever going to get enough of them in these volumes? Like, this would have to be a 100 volume series.
Bring it on.
For me to be satisfied. Bring it on. Even
it'll be over the course of
like
10 years because they take so long to come out, but that's fine. Something to look forward to.
Are there any standout moments, any favorite moments or arcs so far that you've kind of really taken to that we might not have discussed yet?
Talked about a lot of them. I think that everything with the cave was great. There are certain panels where there's no need for them to be embellished, really. And then she's like, you know what? I'm just going to turn this up and for whatever reason go really hard on this random, like, Kifri contemplating. part, but
Mm,
I feel like there was a lot of flexing with the paneling in that moment.
mm,
So just from a artistic standpoint, I really like
mm,
all of that. Anytime they're in the city, she's basically like, look at everything I can draw. Everything with the cave, the plot points in that were great. And then everything with Kustis and Dagda is, I
mm,
think, phenomenal. But we touched on some of my favorite moments already
mm,
with the change that we would want within stories when you
mhm,
actually see characters represent what would it be like if somebody believed you? That
mhm,
sense of relief and gratefulness that there are good people in the world.
mhm.
I think those parts are always really hard hitting.
I totally agree. My favorite moments so far have been actually more recent because it's, the whole fight with Engindale and Kifri telling Coco to hide because, saying like, I don't want Coco to say this because she should never say what I have to do kind of thing. That kind of whole sequence, this stuff with the leech, during the Silver Eve festival thingy Bobby, all of that stuff, because I love chaos. I love it when there's like mass hysteria and people are like running for their lives. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen Desperate Housewives, but I used to be obsessed with the disaster episodes of that show because it was just all chaos. I just love anything just kind of like society crumbling for a second and they have to kind of scramble to survive, but then what's left of it afterwards? And, do you want to survive it? So I felt like this really cool thing with that because it wasn't what I was expecting to begin with this series, but to have that awful lychee thing, because it just looked so sinister and I wasn't sure how they were going to fight it and stop it, and it just seemed so hopeless. And then that fight with Engindale, with Kifri, and the way that he tricked him, it was just so clever. And that was like one of the more recent volumes.
Yeah.
That was one of the more recent arcs. So I'm like, okay, this series is getting stronger and stronger. There are like maybe some volumes, that aren't as good as previous volumes. Every series is allowed a little bit of a breather, so that I
Right.
feel like Witch Hat has definitely had that. Starting from like volume 10, the stuff with Custis and Aninia, like as soon as Aninia came into it, that's kind of when things just went from worse to worse to worse, with
Yeah.
the kind of chaos that's going on. So yeah, I kind of love all the scarier kind of, and going off of Custis as well with the clockworks, what was
Yes.
it? Almost like bringing people back from the dead. I don't know if they're actually dead or if it
And
was just like the.
Dagda dying over
Mhm.
and over again. He has to keep drawing.
Oh, like that, that is so sinister. Like at the end of the day, that is so sinister and so terrifying. But at the same time, he just wants to save his adoptive dad. And it's so sweet and so beautiful. But that's the thing of it. Like you can really get the beautiful moments of this series, comparing it and contrasting it with something more like kind of more sinister and evil and darker things. And that is a testament to how gorgeous the artwork is. And the fact that the magic is art, the magic is drawing, the magic is all of these things. I just don't think you can really get a more perfect kind of way of showing you, there's so much beauty in life, in creativity. Because you and I, we are creative minds, we are, we make content online, we have like creative ways of kind of channeling art and our thoughts and feelings. And so to see it represented in a manga series like this is just so reassuring that art in literature and stories is like so needed and wanted in this world that it can make change. It can make, you can change your mind. I've learned so many things of different cultures, different people through reading and experiencing stories and literature and different kind of modes of media. And it's totally beautifully represented in everything the mangaka does in this series. It's just, I could literally cry. I
I
could
know.
cry how beautiful it is.
I think too with Coco, I mean, I was hyping up Tarta and the way he reacts to things. But Coco, when she's crying for Kustis and he's like,
Mm,
what gives you the right to cry? And she's like,
mm,
I am you. I did the same thing. Because she also meddled in
mm.
something she wasn't supposed to and she didn't know. And
Yeah.
that caused something to happen to her mom. The difference was
Mm-hmm.
that she had someone to take her in and offer her a sense of guidance. And that also
Mm-hmm.
kind of shielded her, though, from the repercussions of everything she could have faced, whereas he had none of that. And part of why he had none of that was because of the position he found himself in just from his birth and where he lived. I do think that she captures all of that so well. But by the way, speaking of the artistry and things like that, did you read the bonus chapter that implies that the brush buddy is writing this story?
Oh gosh, yes.
It's
Oh, we
so
haven't even
cute.
talked about the brush buddy.
They're so cute.
Oh my god, they are so cute. And you definitely reminded me about the fact that brush buddies, they're another kind of character slash species that I want to see more of Because yeah, I mean, it was very interesting that it was kind of implied that they were writing the story. That's so clever and funny. I thought the brush buddy would be like an animal companion to Coco. That's kind of my first
Just
impression. And
around.
that yeah, it's just erratic. It's not even kind of like the Salem to her Sabrina kind of thing. It's like nothing like that. It's more just a part of this world, and there's still so much for Coco to discover.
The brush buddy
Yeah.
dad having a mustache. Do you remember that? It's so cute.
Yeah, I need to see the entire family. I need to see the grandma. I need to see everything. I need to see like how these brush buddies live and function and
And then
just
I know
all
we
their
haven't
families.
talked as much about like cute funny moments, but I really like
Mm,
with Nil Noah with Tarda's grandfather when
mm,
Kifri, which good early awesome moment with that dragon and the girls are trying to figure out
mm,
how to escape. But Kifri's like, where did the girls go? And Nil Noah's just like, oh, maybe they got bored and left. And then Kifri says
mm.
something like, this is the most fascinating place in the world to them. They wouldn't have left. And then Nil Noah's like, oh, Kifri, you strapping young lad. Or something like very like, oh, my shop is so fascinating to them. I like how the grandpa too tells Kifri he's like studious and handsome or something. And then Coco's like, is he? I do. My friend and I have we were talking about this with my husband. I was like, is Gifrey hot? And then my friend's like, yeah. And then my husband's like, I mean, if you like kindergarten teachers, I'm like, kindergarten teachers who save kids from like natural disasters, like that's like the
Yes.
perfect mix.
Oh my gosh, yes, of course.
I feel like Kifri, anytime what you were talking about with the chaos that can happen, and then
Mm,
everything that goes into that. I feel like when you have it's not just Kifri, other characters have these moments. Like, oh,
mm,
Rugio has like a here comes the cavalry moment a few different times, which is really fun. And whenever Kifri has those moments of like all this stuff is going wrong, and then he's the person that's instead of running away, like he's the figure that's going to fight back. Those moments are
mm,
always so cool because I don't know if cool is the word I usually would associate with this series, but there are some
mm,
very cool moments, and they're usually in the form of Kifri fighting something. Like when all those
mhm.
people from Ramanan show up, and he says something like the reason that you don't want to get into a fight with a witch is because they're basically like an army in and of themselves, and you're like, here we go. You get like all excited. So
So badass.
Kifri's just so cool and interesting and mysterious,
Mhm.
and then just he's so cute with the kids.
And yeah, he has like the best mentor, like mentee student, mentor student relationships because he gets Coco out of her shell. Like he helps her to learn from her mistakes. And honestly, to have a teacher like that is so reassuring. I know I would have benefited so much having more teachers like that when I was younger. But it's the way that we have all of the girls have got Tetia, Ricky,
However you want to say it, it's okay.
in Coco, like they all have different personalities, and he is great with every single one. Do you know who I'm surprised we haven't really talked much about so far?
Agot.
Yes, I was just
Yeah,
Agot. We
I
barely
know.
said anything. It's some of my favorite moments and kind of character moments and character development is from her. Like she is so phenomenal because when we first saw her and she was against Coco, you think, oh, she's going to be the bully. She's going to be the one who doesn't want Coco there. However, I kind of saw that even straight away. She's going to be the one who pushes Coco the most. And Coco is going to grow up and be so grateful that she had somebody opposing her. And then when we have like that compared to one of the more recent volumes, Agot apologizes for the way she acted. She's like, I would never act that way again. And that's only after she has seen with her own eyes the way that Coco has developed and blossomed into her own way. And there is that still that kind of superiority inferiority complex with her in terms of like she might feel a little bit threatened by her because she has those thoughts like, oh, what if Coco does go away? And then she's like, oh, I can't believe I just thought that. I feel like she has these inner battles that are just so fascinating to watch. Her and her family is such a complex relationship that I think is definitely spewed into the way she interacts with Coco specifically to begin with. And yeah, just to have that character growth to her now, but yet still wanting validation from her mother is so, oh my god, like
So I
how
have a question. Do
yeah.
you think, because whenever you see her before she left to study under Kifri and basically like got away from everybody, she
Mm-hmm.
had the beautiful long hair. And we
Mm-hmm.
see in volume 13, it would seem that woman who's watching is her mother, who looks like she's, like classically, conventionally stunning.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost feel like her cutting her hair, it's never spoken
Mm-hmm.
or discussed, but it almost feels like a way of her being like, I reject the almost inherent nepotism, you could say, and
Yeah.
I want to earn my place myself.
Yeah.
And it's like a rejection of her family and the
Yeah.
way that she might have been treated or how she is perceived because she wants to stand on her own. It's like a way to claim herself in a sense, maybe. I don't want to forget when old Rugio notices her and Coco and he's like, do you think you've ever seen her look so like that? Like, have you ever seen her look like that? And they're like, I don't think so. And you're like, nah, it's so cute. And when she like thinks about putting the blanket around Coco and she's like, what am I doing?
Yes!
If she doesn't want a blanket, then she doesn't get one.
Oh my god, that's one of the moments I freaking loved. I loved it when she was like contemplating putting it on her and stuff. And yeah, the outward kind of observations from other people about like how she is changing as a person. To go back to what you said about cutting her hair and things like that, I think that is like an outward sort of manifestation of like how she wants to be individual and how she wants to take control of her own life. Because I feel like a lot of her at the start of the story as well is her trying to prove herself, not just to other people, but to herself, and that she can do it, and that she is capable, she is powerful, she is able to stand on her own feet and kind of take that path for herself. And that's why I think she's such a stickler for the rules too, because this was very, very, I think it was like, what, chapter 3 or 4, when she tells Coco, oh, this is the way you have to do it. You have to take the exam now. Even before Coco was ready for it, she's like, oh, this is just the way everyone does it. You have to follow the rules. And Coco was like, oh, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I feel like there are so many things to her that is a way of reclaiming everything she's kind of gone through herself. And just like, I feel like she's having a bit of an identity crisis. And I feel like all of those things kind of bottling up inside of her is kind of a little bit too much for her, because she even has that moment where she shouts at Coco, you know, when Coco can't write, and Agot's like, everyone goes through this, everyone has anxieties, and everyone has problems, like it's not just you, it's everyone as well. She's a ticking time bomb, and she is like kind of cracking under that kind of pressure.
Do you feel like Orugio almost seems especially attentive toward her? I feel like he pays attention to her more than Rika and Tetia. And Coco, he like kind of, but he seems like especially concerned, which again, I wonder if there's a reason that ties back to his childhood, because the Knights Morales character says like, oh, our Wonder Boy back from the village, you were too high up on your high horse to notice me. He says something like that. Does he see some of himself in her? And I also want to add, it's possible that Agot's own family cut her hair as like a way of saying, you're not one of us, or something. I don't know, but that would be really sad. I want it to be more
that would be tragic.
Which we've gotten Rika's brother feeling like it was his fault. Oh my gosh, it was so sad. I really like that Kifri, with all of them, there's so many times where he like crouches down to their level when he's talking to them. And it's just so different from the way you see the other mentor figures. That is a gesture that a lot of people do to make children feel less intimidated, is when you come down toward them, so you're not like overbearing. And to see that like subtlety that the author incorporates, and I'm especially thinking of a panel with Rika when she doesn't want to take the test and he crouches down, which, by the way, how cute were those little penguin things that they have to carry? And there's a panel, sorry, I know I'm all over the place, but speaking of Agot, there's a part where Coco and Tetia were not taking the test, and they then come in when they realize something's gone wrong, and then they see the wolf version of Iuni and they don't know that it's him. And then something happens, and then because of the cloak, Agot shows up, but she's in the form of a brush buddy, and the way she draws her, like, and then they're like, a brush buddy is saving us, and she's like, no, it's me.
There's just so many. I feel like there's probably not enough like time to like talk through absolutely everything. So I would like everyone to say down below, like, are there any more topics? Like, because we could do this again as well, like in the future, if we have like more things to cover and stuff. So please let us know if there's anything because I feel like there's so much we could have talked about Uini and the wolf kind of transformation and his relationship with Rika. I don't know why that's the one I struggle with the most, but Rika, because that was so cute as well, you know what I mean? And I do feel bad because Tetia, I feel, has had the least development.
Yes, I agree.
She's so lovely. She is so nice. And I do like the fact that she had these moments with the prince, and like that kind of opened up the whole like Kings of Yore, and like the way that witches' relationships were kind of worked in the back in the day, and if that can happen again. But I feel like she's definitely the one who has had the least emotional involvement in the story.
We know nothing about her, really, except for that she likes spells that make people happy.
Yeah, and she likes saying thank you to people who say thank you to her as well. Like, thank you. No, thank you for thanking me. You know, like she's so bubbly, she's so lovely. And she does balance it out still. Like, she is the one who I think brings a whole lot of sunshine to a lot of the darker
she's
things.
Like Rika's opposite, because she's very like extroverted and bubbly and happy, and then Rika's kind of like the quirky one that's quiet in the corner. Not quirky, but more of like almost like hipster feeling. Like if you
Mm,
think of
yeah.
classifications of like kids in high school or middle school or
Hmm.
even elementary school,
Yeah.
she's like the kind of strange one who's just quiet. And
Mhm.
Agot's the one that's like, I gotta get straight A's. And then
Yes.
Coco's like, I'm trying my best. And then there's Tetia just being like, hey everybody, look at this cool thing I made. They're all so
Oh
cute.
my god. They all, you've just summed them down to an absolute T. So we can definitely say for sure that I feel like there's not really anything in the story that I hate, or like there's nothing really that I've personally not enjoyed. It's been pretty amazing so far, which I think will lead very well into finally getting an anime of this series in 2025. This is the year.
That's when we're gonna have to talk about it again.
We can go through all of the same like storylines and stuff, but like maybe more embellishment. Maybe we see something in a different point of view because of the music or the animation style or anything like this. The world is our oyster with the anime as well.
Who is your favorite character? I don't know if because I was telling you
That's
Kifri's mine.
yeah, that's because it kind of
Kifri and Olrugio together.
yeah, they're just those two. Like they can't be separated. Those two specifically. I mean, I would probably say Kifri as well at the minute, but I feel like I haven't really solidified my choice just yet because I do love Coco's determination. I love the fact that she continuously learns from her mistakes, and the way that she uses her magic and her spells is that she might have messed up somewhere. So, for example, I think in the exam she takes earlier on, she did the water kind of thing, but she accidentally squid in Agot's face. And she ended up using that during her exam because she was like, oh, if I draw it this way, I can make an updraft and I can get I think it was like a flower she needed to get or something. Like, I love seeing a main character who actually learns and utilizes those mistakes and creates something even more magical. And she has her own unique way of problem solving. And I just love that so much. So I'm so torn because I feel like it's probably an obvious answer to say the main character is my favorite, but oh
I don't
gosh.
know if it is because I think a lot of times you and I were talking about this before about
Mm,
how villains are the most interesting, or you have a side
mhm,
character that's just so charming or so funny.
mhm,
It's like in Avatar: The Last Airbender where I feel like a lot
mm,
of people's favorites is Zuko,
mm.
but I feel like for Coco to be one of your favorite characters maybe isn't necessarily the popular thing.
Maybe. Because I've been so, what's the word? I've gatekept myself from anything with Chat Atelier or like anything Fravoring because I'm reading that in the minute. I kind of just like, I don't want to say any spoilers. I'm like so scared of saying spoilers, so I just kind of keep away from everything. So I don't really know people's opinions on things, but I did watch after I finished like volumes 1 through 5 and then 6 through 10. I did watch your live chats with Sean and Patrick and like the great discussions you had on those because I kind of knew that you had it. And I don't think there's a whole lot of discussion like that, which is again like one of the inspirations for Witch Chat Atelier is because like those kinds of discussions are just so fun to have. Those are the only other like Witch Hat Atelier kind of things I've seen is just like your discussions that you did. So I have no idea what people are thinking about the series. I don't know people's favorite characters. I don't know if people hate something specifically or anything.
I think the most hateable characters are the ones that are overtly hateable.
Like
Like
the
Kukro
pervert who
or
wanted to
yeah,
like see
yeah.
through clothes like him. Yeah, scum.
The way that was handled, where it's like you make people have to feel
Mm.
invaded all the time. Like
Un-
you are
Unsafe.
seeing this as a benefit to you, and you
Hmm.
think all men are like this, which is why that Knights Morales
Mm,
character, Aesthees or something like that, why
mm,
he is interesting to me because of the way he's like, no, and he's so principled, but
mhm,
at the same time, it's like kind of the theme of the story is should the principles be quite so rigid?
mm.
Anyway, sorry, I could go off again if I
No,
start.
I totally agree with that because it was another thing that you mentioned in your live chat discussion as well that I totally agree with as well is because it was mentioned with that pervert guy being able to see through clothes and making people feel unsafe. It was the thing where he said, oh, why are you treating this as a crime like murder? Like, I haven't murdered anyone. It's like, it doesn't matter. You're making people feel unsafe, invading people's privacy. You are doing like really awful things. Like, you're going to get the same treatment as a murderer would or anything. And again, like a lot of that kind of stuff, I think, should be implemented in the real world. Like people should be taking crimes like that seriously, like that. So I feel like there's so much that we can learn from a chat Atelier. and like
And
draw from.
the newest volume, when they're helping the people that are outside the city,
Mm,
and the spell for the basically like tents is utilized, and you see the
mm,
one woman nursing, and I'm like,
mm,
never seen a manga show something as simple as a woman feeling so much more comfortable now that she's able to have just like this tiny sliver of privacy for her and her baby. And obviously
mm,
different people feel different about, how comfortable they are nursing in front of others and things like that. But there's like this
mm,
chaos, like what you're talking about all around. There's so many people. You don't know who
mm.
any of these people are. You don't know what's going on. And just to have this like feeling of like quietness, even though there's so much going on around you, just simply by having this little bit of privacy, I'm just like, I can't think of another story that would have included that kind of a detail to showcase that
Mhm,
feeling of allowing somebody to just feel a
mhm.
little bit safer.
Maybe in a contemporary, but I feel like for a fantasy story that delves like so much into magic and all of that, I feel like it is revolutionary. It's kind of groundbreaking to have those kinds of moments. It just makes this world feel that much more believable and real. So I love stories like that. Last couple of questions, then I will let you go. But just like any hopes or any kind of things for the anime, is there anything you're looking forward to seeing? Anything you
Oh,
want to happen?
I think having reread this and seeing how much the trailer showcases a lot of the opening scenes exactly, that it gives me hope that they're going to represent the art in a way and the story in a way that is very true to the manga. And I think by enhancing it with like color and music and motion, it's not going to be exactly the same, because part of what makes the art in this so great is the way she utilizes the panels and has so much artistry with like how things go in and out. I do wonder if they're going to play around with that though. If like when they're showing something,
Yeah.
if they're going to have like something going into something else.
Flowing.
I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yes.
But I guess from a selfish perspective, as somebody who majored in music, seeing that the composer, I'm pretty sure, is the composer from Elden Ring, I'm like,
Oh.
oh, the best. I mean, that is so exciting to get a composer that's that good to work on this show. And I really hope they maintain that fantasy feel. I think they will, because the music in the trailer, there's no talking, it's just that music.
Mhm.
And as soon as I heard it, I wanted to try to learn it. And I'm like, what instruments are they using? Because I kind of think they're using instruments from different a different time period that were like more used in different time periods. So that gives me hope that the music is really going to capture this setting exceptionally. And especially I can imagine whenever they go to these festivals that there's going to be music in the background that represents that. So
Mhm.
I have full trust that they're going to bring the story to life in a way. As long as you keep it somewhat true, it's probably going to be great. But the detail of the music is, I think,
Mhm.
the part I'm maybe the most excited about as far as in adaptation form.
It will just enhance the story just so much more. And I feel like music does that. It's something that you can't get from the manga. You can get the same story, you can get the same kind of artwork, but you can never get the music in the manga. And I always feel like it does help to enhance. But yeah, we should get you on the violin on the music team or something, just to, shake things up and make it like that much more magical, I think. I think that'd be really cool.
A little tavern scene.
Yeah, I did just get you in there. But I also love the idea of the paneling stuff, because you do get, see, I think it was like a panel of Coco walking down some stairs or something like in the city, and the way the paneling worked, it kind of looked like it was like more sprawling and stuff. And I think there's like so many tricks that the anime can do to really enhance it. I did read the first 3 volumes of Freyren, and then I watched the first episode of Freyren. And one thing I loved about the first episode of Freyren was just like the tiny little addition. Like it wasn't even anything that would change the story or anything. It was just like a tiny little additions. So, for example, say, actually, no, I don't want to say because I don't want to spoil, but you know what I mean. I don't want to put too much new stuff in the anime that it kind of takes away from the story, but to enhance and maybe just like add those little things that could have happened in the manga, then great. Like I would genuinely love that too. Whereas, if it was something like, I think the older animes, they have a lot of filler. They do this, that. I don't want filler. I
Yeah.
just want the story, because it's just, I feel like the pacing and the tightness of it really works in its favor. So if we keep that pacing, then great. That would be
Anytime
fantastic.
Kifri does any kind of water magic is gonna look amazing
Mm,
too. I'm excited to see, because I feel like animators have a lot of fun, or maybe it's painful. I don't know, but I feel like water is always animated in a way that looks really cool. So I'm
Yeah.
excited to see how they animate all of his, because he's and Belderut, the way he has all these like smoky illusions and all the whimsy. I feel like that'll be really fun to
Mm,
see. And sound effects. I'm curious how they're gonna
mm.
capture the sound of the magic, if at all.
Oof.
I think that'll be a lot
Yeah.
of fun. And then we'll finally know how to say their names. That too.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. And even the word atelier, sometimes I don't know if I'm saying that right because I've never heard that word before. So am I even saying the series right? I don't know.
I think so.
I think so too. It sounds about right, but I would
Isn't it
like,
French, technically?
oh,
The
maybe.
word? I think it has a French origin, but I might
But
be wrong.
I feel like there might be some like French inspirations, and I think there's a special deluxe edition that's just come out in France. Actually, that looks
Ugh,
absolutely beautiful, absolutely stunning. France got all the good stuff.
French. I just checked. It says it's French. Yeah.
Okay, thank God. Okay, we weren't making things up. We weren't lying to you all. Last thing, you mentioned at the very start, but that is the video game aspect of it. Like, how would you love to see Witch Hat Atelier made into a game? And like, would you make it a little bit like Elden Ring? I know you mentioned the composer for the series. That would be good. Would you want like a really hard, what do you call it? Like a Souls-like game? Is that what you call them?
I don't think that Souls would make sense for this.
Would you not? Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think. I will say, I know the creator of the Souls games is inspired by, I think specifically Berserk, but
Oh, yeah.
there's a panel within Witch Hat that looks so similar to a part of Elden Ring. So that's
Mm,
kind of fun. But I don't know that necessarily they've checked out Witch Hat Atelier. But regardless,
I
I
should.
don't think, I think that's too difficult and too dark. But I like the idea. There's a couple things. I like the idea of there being a like a morality system. There's certain games where
Mm,
depending on certain decisions you make, you either
mm,
start to become like quote unquote evil or good. And so I like the idea that you can explore, and depending on your decisions, you either go toward the brim hats or not.
ooh,
And I think that could be kind of fun. You decide for
mhm,
yourself as you're more exposed to things in the world and you do these various quests. It starts to have, I think the Fable games are pretty known for this. Red Dead Redemption's known for having this. And then games like Witcher, it's not quite like that, but certain decisions within quest lines do affect the outcome. So I think that would
mm,
be really fun and would tie the themes in, and you could go back and play again and do it something different. I don't think that I would want it to be quite as dark. I think you'd want to maintain the colorful, vibrant feeling that it has. And I feel like the Atelier would be like the place you come back to.
mm,
But as far as the magic goes, you see like Kifri has like that pocket spell thing. So I feel
mm.
like that would be the ones that you have all the time, like your quick spells. And then you have certain spells that take longer to cast. And then you have to like learn spells that which would be the equivalent of crafting materials, things like that. And you're
Yes.
like upgrading your wand makes it so like you can write faster or something like that. I think that could be a lot of fun.
Love
It
that.
could be a really fun game for sure, I think.
That would be amazing. So you're going down the track of you're making your own character and you're going down these different routes rather than playing the story of the manga.
I think I would want it to be a random character that you maybe interact with. Potentially, you interact with characters at some point that you see in the manga, but maybe you're your own
Mhm.
character. Or you could follow the characters from this and like Kifri is your teacher or something. That could be fun. You can choose which of the girls to be. That would be kind of cute too. Like, do you want to play through with Coco? Do you want to play through with Agot?
What if you play as all of them, but each of them obviously they have their different skills. You know in those games where it's like multiple
Ensemble
characters that you
cast?
play? Yeah, and you have to change character to like go through a certain obstacle because only that character can like tackle that obstacle. Maybe that could be fun
That could
as
be
well. You
cool.
can
Or if
you
you
can
have a
switch
party
between them.
system, if you like want to cast a
Mm.
really spell, then your other characters need to be like defensive for the time being.
Oh,
It'd be so good. There's
oh,
so much you could
oh
do
my
with it.
God.
It'd be really fun.
I was just gonna say, I almost wish I didn't ask this question because now I want
You
it.
want it?
I want
Yeah,
it. I
yeah.
want it.
That's the problem whenever I think of anything as a video game, is that I'm like, well, why
Mhm,
doesn't this exist yet? Like the amount of
mhm.
time I've spent talking about how Mistborn needs to be a video game.
Oh,
But you were talking about their fit earlier.
oh
You
yeah.
could have so much fun with their different
Mm,
outfits too.
that would be so fun. Oh my God. Well, I feel like everyone is probably also going to want to play this game because I know I do. Would you want a Lego version of it? Do you like Lego games?
I've never played a Lego game.
Ooh.
I know. I've never played one. I love games, but I've never played a Lego game ever.
Okay, your homework before the next like chat that we do. Play a Lego
Play
game.
one?
Any Lego game. I like the Lego Lord of the Rings. I like that one.
Okay.
That one's a pretty fun
Okay.
one. But yeah, that was Witch Chat Atelier, and I want to give a huge thank you to Elle for joining me today for it. Elle, is there anything you want to end off with? Anything you want to say other than I was like the best?
I mean, the best collab ever. I really want more people to discover this series. So if I'm assuming if somebody's watching this, they've obviously checked the series out, unless they're one of those rare individuals that likes to watch spoilers about things they haven't checked out. But
It
I just
happens.
want as many people to experience the story as possible. So I guess just keep hyping it up and share theories. And if you see certain theories online, share them with other people or share artwork that you see and the artists that create fan art for this, because I really want more people to discover it for all the reasons we discussed, because there's so much beauty in this story and such a great reflection of our society, what things could be like, how things actually are. And I really want the anime to make sure it gets a second season.
Everyone rally around it, because we need second, third, fourth. We need the entire thing adapted, essentially. So yeah, all the support for Witch Hat would be fantastic. I feel like an imposter almost, because you've been a fan for such a long time, and here's Space One, and then like, yeah, you make sure you rally behind it because I wanted to. It's like,
Oh
come
no,
on.
I feel like that's the fun, is when more and more people become fans of. I never understand. I mean, I guess I suppose I kind of understand this feeling of when people are getting into something and you're like, it was mine first. I guess I kind of on a very basic level understand that, but at the same time, I'm like, but that's the fun, is when other people discover it and then you have more people to talk about and more people see how great it is. Plus, in this situation, I think that this creator is brilliant both in the storytelling and in the art. It's like unparalleled to have the combination of great storytelling and art the way that they do. So for them, I want it to be hyped up. I like when people talk about it like, oh wow, for their first series, they're really good. And it's like, they make artwork for DC and Marvel, right? Like they're an established, like they're known for being a great artist.
Yeah. So obviously they would do a phenomenal job. It's like, is that even a question? Definitely, I think up there is one of my favorite mangakas of all time in terms of like art style and art direction and everything, because it's just absolutely stunning. So yeah, I can't wait to welcome all of the fans who end up discovering Witch Hat Atelier through the anime. Again, like, please do leave all the comments down below. Let us know if there are any questions or things that we might not have talked about that we could potentially talk about again in the future. I think that would be really fun. You can find Elle over at Elliot Brooks' Awful Meta Analysis. She's a jack of all trades. She can do everything. She loves everything, and you can find everything. Okay.
No discerning taste. I just like it all.
She likes it all. There is nothing that is sacred. Okay. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Please do leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.